Hello, listening squirrels. I owe y'all an apology. Didn't get to reading yesterday. So let's finish up chapter 11, Small Temptations. Okay, here we are. Let me go back just a minute. We were in the shop and there was that little lady looking for flannel, talking about, let's see, it goes, she had meant only to point the way, but following a new impulse, she went on listening to the poor soul's motherly prattle about me baby and the throuble it was to find clothes for the growing childer when me man is out of work and the bit and sup inconvenient. These hard times as they descended to that darksome lower world where necessities take refuge, when luxuries crowd them out from the gayer place above. Yeah. The presence of a lady made Mrs. Sullivan's shopping very easy now, and her one poor bit of flannel grew miraculously into yards of several colors, since the shabby purse was no lighter when she went away, wiping her eyes on the corner of a big brown bundle, a very little thing, and no one saw it but a wooden-faced clerk, who never told, yet it did Rose good and sent her up into the light again with a sober face, thinking, self-reproachfully, what right have I to more gay gowns when some poor babies have none, or to spend time making myself fine while there is so much bitter want in the world. Nevertheless, the pretty things were just as tempting as ever, and she yearned for the opal silk with a renewed yearning when she got back. It's not certain that it would not have been bought, in spite of her better self, if a good angel in the likeness of a stout lady with silvery curls about the benevolent face, enshrined in plain bonnet, had not accosted her as she joined Kitty, still brooding over the wedding gowns. I waited a moment for you, my dear, because I'm in haste and very glad to save myself a journey or a note, began the newcomer in a low tone as Rose shook hands with the most affectionate respect. You know the great box factory was burned a day or two ago, and over 100 girls thrown out of work. Some were hurt and are in the hospital. Many have no homes to go to, and nearly all need temporary help of some sort. We've had so many calls this winter, I hardly know which way to turn, for want is pressing. And I've had my finger in so many purses I'm almost ashamed to ask again. Any little contribution, I thank you. I was sure you wouldn't fail me, my good child. And Mrs. Gardner warmly pressed the hand that went so quickly into the little portemonnaie and came out so generously filled. I'm sure I screwed that word up. Let me know how else I can help, and thank you very much for allowing me to have a share in your good work, said Rose, forgetting all about the gay gowns as she watched the black bonnet go briskly away with an approving smile on the fine old face inside it. You extravagant thing, how could you give so much? Whispered Kitty, whose curious eye had seen 3 figures on the single bill which had so rapidly changed hands. I believe if Mrs. Gardner asked me for my head, I should give it to her, answered Rose lightly. Then turning to the silks, she asked, which have you decided upon, the yellow, white, or blue, the corded or the striped? I've decided nothing except that you are to have the pink, and wear it at my ball. See Kitty, who made up her mind but could not give her orders till Mama had been consulted. No, I can't afford it just yet. I never overstep my allowance. I shall have to if I get any more finery. Come, we ought not to waste time here if you have all the patterns you want. and Rose walked quickly away, glad it was out of her power to break through two resolutions which hitherto had been faithfully kept, one to dress simply for example's sake, the other not to be extravagant for charity's sake. As Rosamond had her day of misfortunes, so this seemed to be one of small temptations to Rose. After she had set Kitty down at home and been to see her new houses, she drove about doing various errands for the aunts, and while waiting in the carriage for the execution of an order, young Pemberton came by. As Steve said, this gentleman had been hard hit and still hovered moth-like about the forbidden light. Being the most eligible party of the season, his regard was considered a distinction to be proud of, and Rose had been well scolded by Aunt Clara for refusing so honorable a mate. The girl liked him, and he was the suitor of whom she had spoken so respectfully to Dr. Alec, because he had no need of the heiress and had sincerely loved Rose. He had been away, and she hoped had gotten over his disappointment as happily as the rest. But now when he saw her and came hurrying up so hungry for a word, she felt that he had not forgotten and was too kind to chill him with the bow which plainly says, "Don't stop." A personable youth was Pemberton, and had brought with him from the wilds of Canada a sable-lined overcoat which was the envy of every masculine and the admiration of every feminine friend he had. And as he stood at her carriage window, Rose knew that this luxurious garment and its stalwart wearer were objects of interest to the passers-by. It chanced that the tide of shoppers flowed in that direction, and as she chatted, familiar faces often passed, with glances, smiles, and nods of varying curiosity, significance, and wonder. She could not help feeling a certain satisfaction in giving him a moment's pleasure, since she could do no more. But it was not that amiable desire alone which made her ignore the neat white parcels which the druggist boy deposited on the front seat, and kept her lingering a little longer to enjoy one of the small triumphs which girls often risk more than a cold in the head to display. The sight of several snowflakes on the broad shoulders, which particularly obstructed her view, as well as the rapidly increasing animation of Pemberton's chat, reminded her that it was high time to go. "I mustn't keep you. It's beginning to storm," she said, taking up her muff, much to old Jacob's satisfaction, for small talk is not exciting to a hungry man whose nose feels like an icicle. "Is it? I thought the sun was shining." And the absorbed gentleman turned to the outer world with visible reluctance, for it looked very warm and cozy in the red-lined carriage. "Wise people say we must carry our sunshine with us," answered Rose, taking refuge in commonplaces, for the face at the window grew pensive suddenly as he answered with a longing look, "I wish I could." Then, smiling gratefully, he added, "Thank you for giving me a little of yours." "You're very welcome," and Rose offered him her hand, while her eyes mutely asked pardon for withholding her leave to keep it. He pressed it silently, and shouldering the umbrella which he forgot to open, turned away with an up again and take another expression, which caused the soft eyes to follow him admiringly. I ought not to have kept him a minute longer than I could help, for it wasn't all pity. It was my foolish wish to show off and do as I liked for a minute, to pay for being good about the gown. Oh me, how weak and silly am I, in spite of all my trying." And Miss Campbell fell into a remorseful reverie which lasted till she got home. "Now, young man, what brought you out in this driving storm?" asked Rose as Jamie came stamping in that same afternoon. "Mama sent you a new book. Thought you'd like it." "I don't mind your old storms," replied the boy, wrestling his way out of his coat and presenting presenting a face as round and red and shiny as a well-polished Baldwin apple. Much obliged. It is just the day to enjoy it, as I was longing for something nice to read," said Rose, as Jamie sat down upon the lower stair for a protracted struggle with his rubber boots. Here you are, then no, yes, I do believe I've forgotten it after all," cried Jamie, slapping his pockets one after the other, with a dismayed expression of countenance. "Never mind, I'll hunt up something else. Let me help you with those hands. With those, your hands are so cold." And Rose good-naturedly gave a tug at the boots while Jamie clutched the banisters, murmuring somewhat incoherently as his legs flew up and down. "I'll go back if you want me to. I'm so sorry. It's very good of you, I'm sure. Getting these horrid things on made me forget. Mother would make me wear 'em, though I told her they'd stick like gumdrops," he added, inspired by recollections of certain dire disappointments when the above-mentioned sweetmeat melted in his pockets and refused to come out. "Now what shall we do?" asked Rose when he was finally extricated. "Since I've nothing to read, I may as well play." "I'll teach you to pitch and toss. You catch very well for a girl, but you can't throw worth a cent," replied Jamie, gamboling down the hall in his slippers and producing a ball from some of the mysterious receptacles in which boys have the art of storing rubbish enough to fill a peck measure. Of course, Rose agreed and cheerfully risked getting her eyes blackened and her fingers bruised till her young receptor gratefully observed that it was no fun playing where you had to look out for windows and jars and things. "So I'd like that jolly book about Captain Nemo and the Nautilus, please." Being gratified, he spread himself upon the couch, crossed his legs in the air, and without another word dived 20,000 leagues under the sea, where he remained for 2 mortal hours, to the general satisfaction of his relatives. Bereft both of her unexpected playfellow and the much-desired book, Rose went into the parlor there to discover a French novel which Kitty had taken from a library and left in the carriage among the bundles. Settling herself in her favorite lounging chair, she read as diligently as Jamie, while the wind howled and snow fell fast without. Of course, I forgot my drink, so you'll hear my dry mouth noises. Sorry. For an hour, nothing disturbed the cozy quiet of the house, for Aunt Plenty was napping upstairs, and Dr. Alec writing in his own sanctum, at least Rose thought so, till his step made her hastily drop the book and look up with very much the expression she used to wear when caught in mischief years ago. "Did I startle you?" "Have a screen. You're burning your face before this hot fire," and Dr. Alec pulled one forward. "Thank you, Uncle. I didn't feel it," and the color seemed to deepen in spite of the screen, while the uneasy eyes fell upon the book in her lap. "Have you got the Quarterly there? I want to glance at an article in it if you can spare it for a moment," he said, leaning toward her with an inquiring glance. "No, sir, I'm reading," and without mentioning the name, Rose put the book into his hand. The instant his eye fell on the title, he understood the look she wore and knew what mischief she had been in. He knit his brows, then smiled, because it was impossible to help it. Rose looked so conscience-stricken in spite of her 20 years. "How do you find it? Interesting?" "Oh, very. I felt as if I was in another world and forgot all about this." "Not a very good world, I fancy, if you were afraid or ashamed to be found in it." "Where did this come from?" asked Dr. Alec, surveying the book with great disfavor. Rose told him and added slowly, "I particularly wanted to read it and fancied I might, because you did when it was so much talked about the winter we were in Rome." I did read it to see if it was fit for you, and decided that it was not, I suppose, since you never gave it to me." "Yes." "Then I won't finish it. But, Uncle, I don't see why I should not," added Rose wistfully, for she had reached the heart of the romance and found it wonderfully fascinating. "You may not see it, but don't you feel why not?" asked Dr. Alec gravely. Rose leaned her flushed cheek on her hand and thought a minute, then looked up and answered honestly, "Yes, I do, but can't explain it except that I know something must be wrong because I blushed and started when you came in." "Exactly," and the doctor gave an emphatic nod as if the symptoms pleased him. "But I really don't see any more harm in the book so far. It's by a famous author, wonderfully well written, as you know, and the characters so lifelike that I feel as if I should really meet them somewhere." "I hope not," ejaculated the doctor, shutting the book quickly as if to keep the objectionable beans from escaping. Rose laughed, but persisted in her defense, for she did not want to finish the absorbing story. She did want to finish, yet would not without leave. "I've read French novels before, and you gave them to me. Not many, to be sure, but the best, so I think I know what is good, and shouldn't like this if it was harmful." Her uncle's answer was to reopen the volume and turn the leaves an instant, as if to find a particular place. Then he put it into her hand, saying quietly, "Read a page or two aloud, translating as you go. You used to like that. Try it again." Rose obeyed and went glibly down a page, doing her best to give the sense in her purest English. Presently she went more slowly, then skipped a sentence here or there, and finally stopped short, looking as if she needed a screen again. "What's the matter?" asked her uncle, who'd been watching her with a serious eye. "Some phrases are untranslatable, and it only spoils them to try. They're not amiss in French, but sound coarse and bad in our blunt English," she said a little pettishly, for she felt annoyed by her failure to prove the contested point. "Ah, my dear, if the fine phrases won't bear putting into honest English, the thought they express won't bear putting into your innocent mind. That chapter is the key to the whole book, and if you'd been led up, or rather down to it, artfully and artistically, you might have read it to yourself without seeing how bad it is. All the worse for the undeniable talent which hides the evil so subtly and makes the danger so delightful." He paused a moment, and then added with an anxious glance at the book over which she was still bending, "Finish it if you choose, only remember, my girl, that one may read at 40 what is unsafe at 20, and then we never can be too careful what food we give that precious yet perilous thing called imagination." And taking his review, he went away to look over a learned article which interested him much less than the workings of a young mind nearby. Another long silence, broken only by an occasional excited bounce from Jamie, when the sociable cuttlefish looked in at the windows, or the Nautilus scuttled a ship or two in its terrific course. A bell rang, and the doctor popped his head out to see if he was wanted. It was only a message for Aunt Plenty, for he was about to pop in again when his eye was caught by a square parcel on the slab. "What's this?" he asked, taking it up. "Rose wants me to leave it at Kitty Van's when I go. I forgot to bring her book for Mama, so I shall go and get it as soon as I've done this," replied Jamie from his nest. As the volume in his hands was a corpulent one, and Jamie only a third of the way through, Dr. Alec thought Rose's prospect rather doubtful, and slipped the parcel into his pocket. He walked away, saying with a satisfied air, "Virtue doesn't always get rewarded, but it shall be this time if I can do it." More than half an hour afterward, Rose woke from a little nap and found the various old favorites with which she had tried to solace herself replaced by the simple, wholesome story promised by Aunt Jessie. "Good boy, I'll go and thank him," she said half aloud, jumping up wide awake and much pleased. But she did not go, for just then she spied her uncle standing on the rug warming his hands with a generally fresh and breezy look about him which suggested a recent struggle with the elements. "How did this come?" she asked suspiciously. "A man brought it." "This man? Oh, uncle, why did you take so much trouble just to gratify a wish of mine?" she cried, taking both the cold hands in hers with a tenderly reproachful glance from the storm without to the ruddy face above her. "Because, having taken away your French bonbons with the poisonous color on them, I wanted to give you something better. Here it is. All pure sugar, the sort that sweetens the heart as well as the tongue and leaves no bad taste behind. How good you are to me. I don't deserve it for this. No, don't deserve it, for I didn't resist temptation, though I tried. Uncle, after I'd put the book away, I thought I must just see how it ended, and I'm afraid I should have read it all if it had not been gone," said Rose, laying her face down on the hands she held as humbly as a repentant child. But Uncle Alec lifted up the bent head, and looking into the eyes that met his frankly, though either held a tear, he said with the energy that always made his words remembered, "My little girl, I would face a dozen storms far worse than this to keep your soul as stainless as snow. For it's the small temptations which undermine integrity unless we watch and pray and never think them too trivial to be resisted." Some people would consider Dr. Alec an over-careful man, but Rose felt he was right, and when she said her prayers that night, added a meek petition to be kept from yielding to 3 of the small temptations which beset a rich, pretty, and romantic girl: extravagance, coquetry, and novel reading. And that's the end. I was just thinking coquettish. All right, the end of Small Temptations. So tomorrow, unless I come on today, it probably won't. Chapter 12 is called At Kitty's Ball. That ought to be a good one. Hope you enjoyed today's reading. Sorry about the dry mouth. I don't know why I cannot remember to bring something to drink. Because a lot of times when I come in here, I just see the computer sitting here and go, "Oh, I should read." Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Live at 3 today. Probably on StreamYard, unless I can get Restream to work. I'm going to try to talk more with the people on the panel, but still somehow keep up with chat. And I don't know what in the world happened. I know I didn't have a big crowd yesterday. Reggie was live, and that was totally fine. We had a great time at her party. Like I said, I didn't even want to leave, but I did want to do my live. But all my thumbs disappeared. I've never had a video or the live without some thumb love, so that's crazy. Pretty sure I had at least 40 some. Got up this morning, it was 0. Oh my gosh. Oh well. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly, and hope to see you at 3. Bye bye.